The Galactic Council Chamber floated in the silent darkness of space. A massive ring of silver and light that housed representatives from 47 different species. For 12,000 years, these species had lived in peace, sharing knowledge and resources across hundreds of star systems. War was a concept they had left behind long ago, a relic of their primitive pasts. The Council believed that civilization meant moving beyond violence. Beyond the brutal instincts that had once governed their ancestors, humanity had joined this grand alliance only 30 years ago. And in that short time, they had become favorites among the older species. Ambassador Giwan was particularly beloved. She walked the curved corridors of the station with a gentle smile, always stopping to chat with maintenance workers and junior delegates alike. Her voice was soft and warm, the kind of voice that made even the most anxious species feel safe. She had a gift for listening, for making others feel heard and valued. The insectoid Talon loved her because she never showed disgust at their appearance. The crystalline Vex appreciated her patience during their slow, musical speech patterns. Even the proud Krell, with their thick armor and warrior traditions, had softened around her. Her assistant Minho was equally gentle. He spent his free time in the station's botanical gardens, cultivating flowers from Earth and sharing them with anyone who showed interest. He had once spent 3 hours teaching a young Talon child how to plant seeds. His movements slow and careful, his voice patient and kind. The child's parent had watched with gratitude, amazed that any being could be so tender with a species, so different from their own. The Council had quickly concluded that humans were harmless. They were not physically impressive. The Krell stood twice as tall and could crush steel with their bare hands. The six-limbed Vex could run faster than human eyes could track. The Mindweavers could read thoughts and share memories across vast distances. Humans had none of these advantages. They were soft-skinned and slow, with no natural weapons or armor. Their only notable feature was their unusual endurance and their strange habit of showing teeth when happy, which made some herbivore species uncomfortable, but humans made up for their weakness with charm and intelligence. They were natural diplomats, always finding middle ground in disputes that had stalemated for decades. They were curious about everything, asking endless questions and genuinely interested in the answers. They built friendships easily and maintained them with care. In the 3 decades since first contact, not a single human had raised their voice in anger on the Council station. Not once. The Council had come to see humanity as the embodiment of their highest ideals. Here was a young species that had chosen peace over violence, cooperation over conquest. They were proof that any species, no matter how primitive their past, could evolve into something better. The emergency alarm shattered this comfortable illusion on an ordinary morning. The sound was harsh and unfamiliar because it so rarely activated. Delegates rushed to the central chamber, confusion and concern on their various faces. The display screens flickered to life, showing a distant star system at the edge of Council space. Talon 4. A mining colony. Population: 3,000 Talon workers and their families. The colony had gone silent 12 hours ago. No communications. No automated signals. Nothing. Initial scans showed no natural disasters, no equipment malfunctions, no signs of structural failure. The colony's fusion reactors were still running. Life support was still active, but there was no response from any living being on the surface. The Council's security coordinator, a massive Krell named Thornock, displayed the data with growing concern. Something had happened to the Talon. But what? The Talon were completely peaceful beings. Their biology literally prevented them from acts of violence. They had no enemies, no disputes, no reason for anyone to harm them. G1 stood at the back of the chamber, watching the data scroll across the screens. Her face showed the same concern as everyone else, the same worry for the missing Talon. She raised her hand politely and waited to be recognized. Ambassador Juwan, the Council speaker, acknowledged her. "Do you have thoughts on this matter?" "I would like to volunteer human assistance," she said in her usual gentle tone. "We have several specialists on station who could join the survey team. A medic, an engineer, and a security officer. If the Talon are injured or trapped, we should help them." The speaker's expression showed gratitude. This was exactly the kind of response they expected from humanity. Helpful, compassionate, ready to serve. The Council quickly approved the request. The survey team assembled within hours. Juan would lead the human contingent personally. Heian, the human medic, gathered his equipment with the same patient care he showed to all his patients. He was known throughout the station for his gentle bedside manner, his ability to work with dozens of different physiologies, his endless patience with frightened or confused patients. Once, he had spent an entire night comforting a dying mineweaver, holding their crystalline hand and singing soft songs from Earth until they passed peacefully. Daeon, the human engineer, packed her tools with methodical precision. She was famous for her problem-solving skills and her refusal to give up on any challenge. 6 months ago, she had talked a suicidal Krell worker through a mental health crisis, spending hours on a communication line, never losing patience, never giving up. She had saved his life with nothing but words and compassion. Jiho, the security officer, checked his equipment one final time. In 5 years of service, he had never fired his weapon, except on the practice range. He was proud of that record. His job was to protect people, and he took that seriously, but he had never needed violence to do it. His calm presence and reasonable voice had diffused a dozen potential conflicts without a single shot fired. The 3 humans joined the survey team with quiet confidence. They spoke softly to the other species, offering reassurance and support. No one watching them board the transport ship would ever guess what they were capable of. No one suspected that beneath the gentle smiles and patient voices, something else waited. Something that had been sleeping for 30 years. Something that was about to wake up. The transport ship jumped to faster than light speed, carrying the survey team toward Talon 4. Toward answers. Toward horror. Toward the moment when the Council would finally understand what humanity really was. The transport ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Talon 4 system. What they saw through the viewports made several delegates gasp in horror. Bodies floated in space near the orbital docking platform. Talon workers, still in their environment suits, drifting among debris and shattered equipment. The station itself showed massive damage. Burn marks scarred the hull. Airlocks had been blown open from the outside. This was not an accident. This was an attack. G1 stood at the viewport, staring at the carnage. Her face showed no expression at all. The other delegates were crying, shouting, demanding answers. But Jawan just stood there, completely still. Looking at the dead Talon with eyes that had gone flat and cold, the transport descended to the colony surface. The scene on the ground was worse. Buildings had been burned. Streets were littered with bodies. The Talon had tried to flee, but there had been nowhere to run. The attackers had hunted them through their own colony, killing them in their homes, in their workplaces. In the streets where they had desperately tried to escape, the survivors huddled in the central dome. Maybe 400 Talon out of the original 3,000. They were traumatized, barely able to speak. A Mindweaver delegate gently touched their thoughts and recoiled immediately. Overwhelmed by the terror and pain she found there, slowly, carefully, the Mindweaver extracted what had happened. Raiders had come in the night. Big creatures, heavily armed, wearing black armor, covered in spikes and sharp edges, designed to intimidate. They had killed anyone who resisted and dragged away hundreds of Talon as captives. Before they left, their leader had broadcast a message to the survivors. The Carthex would return in 3 days, to claim the rest of them as property. Anyone who tried to leave would be hunted down. The message was clear. The Talon now belonged to them. The council delegates knew about the Carthex. They were a species that had applied for council membership 70 years ago and been rejected. The Carthex practiced slavery, conquest, and brutal subjugation of weaker species. They believed strength gave them the right to rule over others. The council had tried to reason with them, to show them a better way, but the Carthex had laughed at these attempts. They had retreated to the outer edges of known space. Raiding and pillaging any settlements weak enough to attack, the council had never been able to stop them because the council had no real military. They had peacekeepers, lightly armed ships, meant to deter pirates and respond to emergencies. But against a coordinated military force like the Carthex, these peacekeepers were useless. The delegates immediately called for reinforcements. The nearest peacekeeping flotilla was 6 days away. Too late. The Carthex would return in 3 days. Options were debated frantically. Could they negotiate? Pay a ransom. Maybe offer the Cartheks something valuable in exchange for the Talon. Or should they evacuate who they could and abandon the colony? The Talon listened to these debates with growing despair. No one was talking about fighting back. No one was talking about protecting them. G1 listened for exactly 10 minutes. Then she stood up and walked out of the command center without saying a word. Her movements were different now. The gentle, flowing walk was gone. She moved with purpose, with precision. Like a machine that had just been activated, she went to the communication room and established quantum relay connection to Earth. The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes and was entirely in Korean. No translation was offered. When she finished, she stood there for a moment, her hands still on the console, her eyes closed. When she opened them again, something fundamental had changed. G1 returned to the command center and made an announcement. Humanity will handle this situation. Earth is sending a response team. They will arrive in 2 days. The other delegates stared at her in confusion. Handle it how? What could humans possibly do against 12 Cartheks warships and 5,000 trained warriors? The humans had no military fleet. They had a few peacekeeping vessels. Nothing more, Ambassador Guanthornock, the Krell said carefully. I appreciate the offer, but this is beyond what your peacekeepers can manage. We need to focus on evacuation. Guan looked at him with those flat, cold eyes. I did not say peacekeepers. I said response team. She walked away before anyone could ask what that meant. Minho had disappeared from the command center. Thornock found him 20 minutes later in the colony's armory, sorting through weapons. The Krell security chief stopped in the doorway. Stunned by what he was seeing, Minho's hands moved over the weapons with absolute confidence. He field-stripped a pulse rifle in under 10 seconds, checked the firing mechanism, reassembled it, and set it aside. Then he did the same with a plasma pistol, then a scattergun, then a sniper rifle that most species needed 2 hands just to lift. Minho handled each weapon like he had been doing this his entire life. This was not the gentle gardener who planted flowers and played with Talon children. This was someone else entirely, Minho, Thornock said carefully. What are you doing? Minho looked up with a small smile. The smile was the same as always, friendly and warm. But his eyes were different. They were focused, calculating. Looking at Thornock the way a predator looks at potential prey. Assessing strengths and weaknesses, searching for vulnerabilities. Just getting ready, Minho said in that same gentle voice. The response team will need local support when they arrive. Across the colony, Hyun and Jiho were reviewing tactical maps. Not medical stations or evacuation routes. Tactical maps. Kill zones. Choke points. Fields of fire. They spoke in calm, quiet voices, using terms that made the eavesdropping delegates deeply uncomfortable. Acceptable casualty ratios. Target priorities. Rules of engagement. These were not the humans the council knew. These were strangers wearing familiar faces. Thelen, an elderly mindweaver, approached Jiwan that evening. He had known her for 15 years, considered her a dear friend. He was worried about her mental state. The stress of the situation must be affecting her judgment. Jiwan, he said gently. Reaching out with his telepathic senses to offer comfort and support, he touched her mind and froze. For 800 years, Thelen had been reading minds. He had touched the thoughts of thousands of beings across dozens of species. He knew the feel of consciousness, the patterns of emotion and thought that made up a sentient mind. What he felt in Jiwan was completely alien to his experience. It was not chaos or madness. It was focus. Pure, absolute, unwavering focus. Her mind was like a blade, sharp and cold, and pointed at a single target. There was no doubt, no fear, no hesitation. Just purpose. And underneath that focus, something else. Something old and hungry and patient. Something that had been waiting. Thelen pulled back from her mind, actually taking a physical step away from her. Jiwan watched him with those cold eyes and spoke. We have been good neighbors to you, good friends. We have smiled and laughed and shared our gardens and our stories. But you are about to see what we were before we met you. What we still are when we choose to be. What are you? Thelen whispered. We are what happens when prey evolves into predators, Jiwan said quietly. We are what happens when a species spends 10,000 years hunting everything that moves. We learn to be civilized. We learn to be kind. But we never forgot how to hunt. She walked past him, leaving Thelen standing alone in the corridor, trembling. The response team from Earth was coming. And the Council was about to learn that humanity had been hiding something far more terrifying than anyone had imagined. The human response team arrived exactly when Jiwan said they would. 6 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. And for a moment, the Council delegates could not even see them. The vessels were painted in adaptive camouflage that shifted and changed, making them nearly invisible against the starfield. They were small and sleek, built for speed and stealth rather than intimidation. The ships carried no designation. No identification markers, no flags or symbols. They were ghosts. They landed at the colony's main spaceport without requesting permission or announcing themselves. The boarding ramps descended, and 200 humans emerged in perfect formation. They moved like water, flowing down the ramps and spreading out across the landing area with synchronized precision. Not a single wasted movement. Not a single voice raised. The Council delegates watched from the command center windows, and several of them felt a primal fear they could not explain. These humans looked almost identical to the ones they knew. Same basic body shape, same physical proportions, but everything about them was different. They moved wrong. Too smooth, too quiet, too coordinated. They did not walk like people going about their daily business. They walked like hunters on the prowl, every sense alert, every muscle ready to explode into action at a moment's notice. The team leader approached the command center. She was young, maybe 30 years old in human terms, with dark hair pulled back in a tight braid and scars along her jawline that spoke of past violence. Her eyes swept across the assembled delegates with the same assessing gaze Minho had shown. Thornock. Measuring, calculating, deciding who was a threat and who was. Not Captain Somin, she introduced herself. Her voice was calm and professional, showing no emotion at all. Earth Defense Force, Special Response Unit. Guan met her at the entrance. The two women looked at each other for a long moment, then Somin gave a brief nod. Juan nodded back. Some kind of understanding passed between them without words. They spoke in rapid Korean. Too fast for the translation software to keep up. The delegates noticed Jiwan's body language change. She deferred to Salman, stepping slightly back, letting the other woman take the lead. Whatever chain of command existed here, it was clear who was in charge. Salman's team spread through the colony with disturbing efficiency. The council delegates tried to observe them, but the humans politely blocked their access to certain areas. Operational security, they said, non-negotiable. When Thornock tried to insist, a human named Hajin stepped in front of him. Sir Hajin said with perfect politeness, I need you to stay in the designated safe zones. This is for your protection. Thornock outweighed the human by at least 50 kilograms and stood a full head taller. But something in Hajin's stance, in the way he held his body, made it absolutely clear that if Thornock tried to push past him, very bad things would happen. The Krell security chief, veteran of 100 conflicts, backed down without another word, through the windows of the sealed-off areas. The delegates caught glimpses of the humans at work. They moved like a single organism, each person perfectly aware of where the others were and what they were doing. No orders needed to be given. Everyone knew their role and executed it flawlessly. Salman stood at the center of a hastily assembled command center, reviewing holographic displays that showed the Carthex fleet composition, estimated arrival time, and tactical analysis of their weapons and armor. She studied the data with casual interest, the way someone might review a grocery list. She was discussing the destruction of 12 warships and the elimination of 5,000 enemy combatants, and she looked bored. Standard raid configuration, she said to her second-in-command, a man named Doyon. Nothing creative. They'll drop out of FTL at the system edge. Broadcast threats, advance in standard formation, predictable. Do we engage in orbit or let them land? Doyon asked. Soman said, I want Eunice Flight to take out their capital ships. Ground teams will handle the warriors. Full containment. No survivors. No survivors. She said it the way someone might say, No pickles on my sandwich. Simple preference easily executed. Hyun was no longer pretending to be just a medic. He set up a triage station, but his movements were too practiced, too efficient. This was someone who had treated combat wounds 100 times before. He organized his medical supplies with the calm competence of a field. A surgeon who knew exactly how much blood he would be seeing in the next few hours. Daeon moved through the colony with a scanner and a bag of equipment. She placed small devices at strategic points throughout the settlement. Charges, explosives, not random destruction, but carefully calculated placements designed to collapse certain corridors, block certain routes, herd enemy forces into predetermined locations. Kill zones. Minho had disappeared entirely. Thornock eventually found him on top of the colony's tallest structure, assembling a rifle that was definitely not council-approved technology. The weapon was almost as long as Minho was tall, with a scope that looked like it could see into the next solar system. The gentle gardener who had played with children was now a sniper, and the rifle in his hands looked as natural as a flower stem had just days before. A young human operative named Taeyang walked through the area where the Talon survivors were sheltering. He smiled at them, trying to be reassuring, but the Talon instinctively moved away from him. They could not explain why. He looked harmless enough, but something deep in their prey instincts screamed danger. Some ancient part of their brain recognized what he was. A predator. Thelen attempted to read the minds of the human response team. He wanted to understand what was happening, what these humans were thinking. What he found made him wish he had never tried. Their minds were not filled with rage or hatred or bloodlust. There was no emotion at all, just cold mathematical calculation. Target priorities, ammunition counts, firing solutions, escape routes. They were planning mass slaughter the way an architect plans a building, with precision, with care, with absolute professional competence. One of the humans, a woman named Yuna, was reviewing her flight plan for the orbital engagement. Thelen touched her mind lightly and found her running through combat scenarios. In her imagination, she executed a maneuver that involved threading her ship through a gap, measuring less than 3 meters while traveling at several 1,000 kilometers per hour, all while under fire from multiple directions. The maneuver would kill most pilots. She was planning to do it at least twice during the coming battle, and she was not afraid. Not even a little bit. Thelen pulled out of her mind and found Salmon watching him. She had known he was there, had felt him reading her people. She walked over to him, moving with that same predatory grace. "We make you uncomfortable," she said. It was not a question. "You are going to kill them all," Thelen whispered. "The Carthex, all of them. 5,000 warriors, 12 ships. You are planning to leave no survivors." "Yes," Soman confirmed. "How can you be so calm about this? You are talking about mass killing." Salmon looked at him with genuine confusion. They attacked a council protectorate. They killed 2,000 Talon and enslaved hundreds more. They announced their intention to return and claim the survivors as property. What response would you prefer? Negotiation? Reason? There must be another way. "There is no other way," Salmon said flatly. "The Carthex do not negotiate. They do not respond to reason. They respect only strength. We will show them strength. Once, they will either learn the lesson, or they will not be around to forget it." She walked away, leaving Thelen standing alone, trembling. The humans worked through the night, turning the Talon colony into a trap. They did not sleep, did not stop for meals. They worked with relentless mechanical efficiency, preparing for the coming battle, and in orbit, their ships waited, invisible against the stars. Patient as death itself, the Carthex were coming. They thought they were coming to claim easy prey, to terrorize helpless creatures and add more slaves to their collection. They had no idea. They were flying into the territory of Earth's apex, predators. The hunt was about to begin. The Carthex fleet arrived exactly on schedule. 12 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Talon 4 system, their hulls covered in spikes and blades designed to strike fear into anyone who saw them. The Carthex believed in intimidation as much as firepower. Their ships looked like weapons themselves. sharp and cruel and built to cause pain. The fleet commander broadcast his message to the colony below. His voice was deep and harsh, filled with arrogant confidence. Talon colony, you belong to the Carthax now. Surrender peacefully, and you will be treated fairly as property. Resist, and we will reduce your colony to ash. You have 1 hour to comply. There was no response from the colony. No begging, no pleading, no attempts at negotiation. Just silence. The Carthax commander smiled. Silence meant fear. Fear meant easy conquest. He ordered his fleet to advance toward the planet at a leisurely pace. Let the prey wait and worry. Let them understand the futility of resistance. The human ships had been waiting in the debris. Field of Talon 4's shattered moon, using the planet's magnetic field to hide their energy signatures. They had been there for 16 hours, completely motionless, their crews patient and still, waiting for the perfect moment. That moment came when the Carthax fleet reached the optimal position, spread out in their standard formation, confident and careless. Suman's voice came across the human communication channels, calm and clear. All units, engage. Yuna, you have the lead. Show them what happens when they threaten our allies. The human ships struck from 6 different angles simultaneously. They came out of hiding at speeds that should have torn their vessels apart. Moving so fast, they were just blurs against the starfield. The Carthax sensors screamed warnings, but by the time the alarms registered, 3 warships were already crippled. Yuna's fighters screamed through the Carthax formation like a bullet. She targeted the engine arrays of the flagship with surgical precision, her weapons firing in short, controlled bursts. The massive warship shuddered as its primary drive exploded in a brilliant flash of white light. Dead in space, unable to maneuver, unable to flee, the Carthax flagship commander roared orders at his crew. Return fire. Target those ships. But the human vessels were already gone, vanished back into the debris. Field before the Carthax weapons could lock on, the human pilots fought like nothing the Carthax had ever encountered. They did not engage in direct combat. They struck and faded, appearing from impossible angles, destroying critical systems and disappearing before retaliation was possible. It was not a battle. It was a hunt. A Carthax cruiser tried to pursue one of the human ships, firing wildly, hoping to score a lucky hit. The human pilot, a man named Kyung, led the cruiser on a chase through the debris field, weaving between tumbling rocks and twisted metal with precision that seemed impossible. The Carthax ship, much larger and less maneuverable, struggled to follow. Kyung led them exactly where he wanted them, a narrow gap between 2 large chunks of moon rock. The Carthax captain saw the trap too late. He tried to brake, tried to turn, but momentum carried his ship forward. The cruiser clipped the debris on both sides, tearing open its hull. Atmosphere vented into space. The ship went dark. Kung's calm voice came over the communication channel. Target neutralized. Moving to next objective. In orbit, Solomon watched the tactical display with professional satisfaction. The Carthax fleet was panicking now, breaking formation, trying to regroup. They were used to fighting prey that stood still and took their punishment. They had no idea how to fight predators. Yuna, the flagship is yours. Everyone else, keep them busy. Do not let them retreat. Yuna acknowledged the order and turned her ship toward the crippled flagship. The massive warship was trying to activate its backup engines, trying to escape. Yuna accelerated to attack speed, her fingers dancing across the controls with the ease of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. The flagship's point. Defense systems opened fire, filling the space around it with deadly projectiles. Yuna flew straight through the barrage, her ship twisting and turning in ways that seemed to defy physics. She took 3 hits to her shields but did not slow down. At the last possible second, she released her payload. 6 missiles, each one guided by advanced AI, each one programmed to find the flagship's bridge. The missiles struck within milliseconds of each other. The flagship's command center exploded in a ball of fire. The massive warship drifted, lifeless, its crew dead or dying, its systems failing. On the ground, the Carthax had deployed their warriors. 5,000 of them, each standing over 2 meters tall, each covered in black armor with spikes and blades. They were the Carthax's pride, They're elite soldiers. Trained from childhood in the art of conquest and intimidation, they entered the colony in formation, weapons ready, expecting to find terrified Talon cowering in corners. Instead, they found empty streets, empty buildings. No one at all. The Carthex commander on the ground, a veteran named Kreth, felt the first whisper of unease. Where was everyone? This was wrong. An ambush? Then the lights went out. Daeon's charges detonated in perfect sequence, not to kill, but to control. Explosions collapsed certain corridors, blocked certain routes, forced the Carthex warriors into predetermined paths. The aliens found themselves being herded like animals, pushed into specific areas, whether they wanted to go there or not. Kreth realized too late what was happening. This was not a random ambush. This was planned, calculated, professional. The first shot came from somewhere high above. A Carthex commander's head exploded in a spray of purple blood, the body dropping to the ground before anyone even heard the shot. The warriors looked up, searching for the shooter, but saw nothing. Minho was already moving, relocating to his next position. He had 17 more shots planned, 17 more targets selected. He would fire from 17 different locations, and the Carthex would never see him. Not once, in the narrow streets, human combat teams engaged the Carthex in close quarters. The aliens were bigger, stronger, heavily armored, but the humans were faster, more precise, and they fought with a coordination that was almost supernatural. Taiyang led a squad of 6 humans against 50 Carthex warriors. The odds should have been impossible. The Carthex charged, roaring their battle cries. Swinging weapons designed to crush and tear, the humans moved like dancers. They slid under attacks, used the Carthex's own momentum against them, targeted weak points in armor with surgical precision. A Carthex warrior swung a plasma blade that could cut through steel. Taiyang ducked beneath it, stepped inside the warrior's guard, and drove a vibroknife up through the gap in the helmet. The warrior fell. Taiyang was already moving to the next target. His team flowed around him, covering his angles, creating overlapping fields of fire. They moved as one organism, perfectly synchronized. The Carthex tried to rally, tried to use their numbers and strength. But in the narrow corridors of the colony, numbers meant nothing. The humans had turned the entire settlement into a killing ground. The Carthex were dying by the dozens. Kreth watched his warriors fall and felt true fear for the first time in his long life. These were not prey. These were predators, and his people were the ones being hunted. He tried to order a retreat, but there was nowhere to go. Every escape route was blocked. Every open area was a kill zone. The humans had planned this perfectly. In orbit, the last 3 Carthex warships attempted to flee. But Soman had positioned her ships to block every escape vector. The warships were trapped, caught in the planet's gravity well. Their faster-than-light drives unable to activate so close to the planetary mass. Finish it, Salman ordered. The human ships converged. It was not a battle. It was an execution. The Carthex warships exploded one by one, their debris adding to the orbital ring around Talon-4. On the ground, the last Carthex warrior fell. The colony went silent, except for the soft footsteps of human soldiers moving through the streets, checking corners, confirming kills. Not a single human casualty. The hunt was over. The prey had been eliminated. And the council had witnessed everything. The council delegates emerged from their shelter. 6 hours after the last shot was fired, they walked through streets littered with Carthex bodies, their eyes wide with shock and horror. The Talon survivors were unharmed, gathering in small groups. Comforted by human medics who had returned to their gentle voices and careful hands, but the evidence of what had happened was everywhere. 5,000 Carthex warriors, dead, all of them. The bodies lay where they had fallen, purple blood staining the colony streets. Not one had escaped. Not one had surrendered. The humans had shown no mercy because no mercy had been asked for. In orbit, debris from 12 warships formed a new ring around the planet. Chunks of metal and scattered components drifted in lazy circles, all that remained of the Carthex fleet. The human ships had already departed, vanishing back into faster-than-light travel, leaving no trace they had ever been there. Thornok the Krell stood in the colony's main square, staring at the carnage around him. He had served in his species' military for 40 years before joining the Council. He had seen combat, had led warriors in battle, had killed enemies with his bare hands. But he had never seen anything like this. This was not war. This was extermination. Clinical, efficient, absolute. Salman found him standing there and stopped beside him. She had changed back into her regular uniform, no longer wearing combat gear. She looked like a normal person again, calm and professional. But Thornok would never be able to see her as normal again. "How can you be so calm?" he asked quietly. "You just killed 5,000 beings." "They came to enslave innocents," Salman said simply. "We stopped them." "Would you prefer we had asked them politely to leave?" "There must have been another way. Negotiation. Reason." "The Kartheks had already killed 2,000 Talon," Salman pointed out. "They announced their intention to enslave the survivors. They gave us their answer before we even asked the question. We simply responded in the only language they understand. By becoming monsters like them?" Salman looked at him with genuine surprise. "Monsters. We protected the innocent. We defended those who could not defend themselves. We removed a threat to Council citizens. How does that make us monsters?" "You killed them all," Thornok whispered. "Yes," Salman agreed. "Every single one. Because if we had let even one escape, they would have returned with reinforcements. They would have told others that humanity was weak, that we could be challenged. More raids would follow. More innocents would die. So we made sure the message was clear and permanent." She paused, then added in a softer voice, "We do not enjoy killing. We are not cruel, but we are very, very good at it when necessary." And it was necessary. Thornok had no response to that. G1 met with the council delegates in the command center. Her warmth had returned, slowly, carefully, like a mask being put back in place. She was their friendly ambassador G1 again, but everyone could see the seams now. They all knew what lay beneath the gentle smile. "I apologize that you had to witness that," G1 said softly. "We truly did not want you to see that side of us." Thelen, the Mindweaver, spoke up. His voice was shaken. "How long? How long have you been hiding this capability?" "We have not been hiding it," Giwan corrected gently. "We simply chose not to lead with it. Humanity spent 10,000 years as persistence hunters before we developed agriculture. We spent another 10,000 years at war with ourselves before we finally learned to cooperate. We evolved as predators, as pack hunters, as pursuit killers. That is written into our DNA, our psychology, our very nature." "But you seem so peaceful," a Vex delegate said. "So gentle and kind." "We are peaceful," Juwan insisted. "We are gentle and kind. Those things are not lies. We chose to be those things. We worked very hard to become those things. When we joined the Council, we wanted to learn from species who had never known the kind of violence that defined our history. We wanted to be better than what we were." She paused, looking around at the assembled delegates. "But we never forgot what we were capable of. We never lost the skills that kept our species alive for hundreds of thousands of years. We just chose not to use them unless absolutely necessary." "And this was necessary?" Thelen asked.
Yes.
Giwan said firmly. "The Kartheks killed our friends. They attacked people under Council protection. They threatened those we had sworn to defend. At that moment, the choice became very simple. We became what we needed to be." Across the colony, the human response team was already packing up. They moved with the same efficient coordination they had shown in combat, breaking down equipment, erasing evidence of their presence, preparing to leave. Within hours, it would be like they were never there. Minho returned to the botanical gardens, carefully tending to flowers that had been damaged during the Kartheks assault. His hands were gentle on the delicate petals, his voice soft as he hummed a tune from Earth. No one watching him would guess those same hands had killed 8 Kartheks warriors in close combat. Just hours ago, he moved through the Talon survivors, checking injuries, offering comfort, his bedside manner as warm and reassuring as ever. The Talon trusted him completely. They had no idea that during the battle he had been calculating the most efficient ways to neutralize Kartheks biology, identifying weak points in their armor and physiology. The human specialists who had seemed so gentle and harmless, had revealed themselves to be something else entirely. And now, they were hiding it again, returning to their peaceful roles, smiling and kind and helpful. But everyone knew now. Everyone had seen word of what happened at Talon 4 spread through the council like wildfire. The story grew in the telling, became embellished and exaggerated, but the core truth remained. Humanity had a military capability far beyond what they had revealed. When pushed, when their allies were threatened, they did not negotiate. They did not compromise. They hunted. The council held an emergency session to discuss the situation. Some delegates demanded that humanity disarm completely, reveal all their hidden military assets, prove they could be trusted. Others argued for expelling humanity from the council entirely. How could they trust a species that had hidden such capacity for violence? Ki-1 addressed the council chamber. She spoke calmly and clearly, explaining humanity's history. The long journey from tribal warfare to global cooperation, the centuries of learning to control their violent instincts, the conscious choice made every single day by billions of humans to be better than their nature told them to be. We did not come to the stars to conquer, Ji-1 told the assembled delegates. We came to learn, to grow, to become something more than what we were. We value this council. We value our friendships with each of you. We will never be the aggressors. We will never strike first. She paused and steel crept into her voice. But we will always strike last. If you attack our allies, if you threaten those we have sworn to protect, you will see what we are capable of. And you will wish you had chosen differently. The council voted after 3 days of debate. Humanity would remain a member, but their role would change. They were no longer just diplomats and peacekeepers. They were now the council's response to threats that could not be negotiated with. The option of last resort? The blade kept sheathed until all other options were exhausted. Humanity accepted this role quietly. They understood the burden of being the predator in a galaxy of prey. Years passed. The Carthex attempted one more raid, targeting a Mindweaver colony on the edge of council space. They did not know humans were present. They learned quickly. Summon's team arrived within hours. This time, the council watched the entire operation via satellite feed. It was a masterclass in coordinated violence. The Carthex were not just defeated. They were dismantled, systematically and efficiently. Their forces broken and scattered. When it was over, Saman broadcast a message to every Carthex vessel in the sector. This is Captain Saman of the Terran Response Fleet. You have attacked our allies. You will not do so again. We do not want war with you. But if you threaten those under our protection, we will find you. We will hunt you. And we will end you. This is not a threat. This is a promise. Carthex never raided Council space again. Back on Harmony's crown, Ji-1 had lunch with Thielen. Their friendship had survived the revelation, though it was different now. More honest, perhaps. More real? Do you ever regret it? Thielen asked. Being what you are? Ji-1 considered this while sipping her tea. Every day, she admitted. But I regret even more what we were before we learned to control it. Humanity's history is written in blood. We nearly destroyed ourselves many times. Learning to channel our predatory instincts toward protection rather than conquest was the hardest thing our species ever did. And you think you have succeeded? I think we are trying, Ji-1 said. Every human you meet is choosing, consciously or not, to suppress instincts that scream at them to hunt, to chase, to dominate. We smile to show friendliness, even though our ancestors showed teeth as a threat. We build alliances even though our instinct says to compete. We practice patience, even though everything in us wants to pursue and capture. She set down her teacup carefully. The galaxy saw what happened at Talon 4 and fears us now. But they should understand this. The restraint we show every single day is far more impressive than any violence we are capable of. Any predator can kill. It takes real strength to choose not to. Talon touched her mind gently, with permission this time. He felt the truth of her words. And beneath that truth, the constant awareness of what she was. A hunter, a predator, an apex killer wrapped in diplomacy and good intentions. Every human carried this same duality. Gentle gardeners and precise killers. Compassionate medics and efficient soldiers. Warm friends and cold executioners. The council had witnessed humanity's predator trigger without warning. But the real miracle, Felon understood now, was that humans had a trigger at all. That they did not live in that state constantly. That they chose, every single day, to be gentle and kind and peaceful. That choice, he realized, was what made them truly remarkable. Humanity remained the galaxy's gentle giants. Patient, diplomatic, endlessly helpful. But everyone knew now. Everyone understood. The gentleness was always a choice. And giants, no matter how gentle, were still giants.